Commentaries on the Laws of England by William Blackstone, Book 1, Introduction, Section 1, On the Study of the Law, Part 1. Mr. Vice-Chancellor and Gentlemen of the University, the general expectation of so numerous and respectable an audience, the novelty, and, I may add, the importance of the duty required from this chair, must unavoidably be productive of great diffidence and apprehensions in him who has the honor to be placed in it. He must be sensible how much will depend upon his conduct in the infancy of a study, which is now first adopted by public academical authority, which has generally been reputed, however unjustly, of a dry and unfruitful nature, and of which the theoretical elementary parts have hitherto received a very moderate share of cultivation. He cannot but reflect that, if either his plan of instruction be crude and injudicious, or the execution of it lame and superficial, it will cast a damp upon the further progress of this most useful and most rational branch of learning, and may defeat for a time the public-spirited design of our wise and beneficent benefactor. And this he must more especially dread, when he feels, by experience, how unequal his abilities are, unassisted by preceding examples, to complete, in the manner he could wish, so extensive and arduous a task, since he freely confesses that his former more private attempts have fallen very short of his own ideas of perfection. And yet the candour he has already experienced, and this last transcendent mark of regard, his present nomination by the free and unanimous suffrage of a great and learned university, an honour to be ever remembered with the deepest and most affectionate gratitude, these testimonies of your public judgment must entirely supersede his own, and forbid him to believe himself totally insufficient for the labour at least of this employment. One thing he will venture to hope for, and it certainly shall be his constant aim, by diligence and attention to atone for his other defects, esteeming that the best return which he can possibly make for your favourable opinion of his capacity will be his unwearied endeavours in some little degree to deserve it. The science thus committed to his charge, to be cultivated, methodized, and explained in a course of academical lectures, is that of the laws and constitution of our own country, a species of knowledge in which the gentlemen of England have been more remarkably deficient than those of all Europe besides. In most of the nations on the continent, where the civil or imperial law under different modifications is closely interwoven with the municipal laws of the land, no gentleman, or at least no scholar, thinks his education is complete till he has attended a course or two of lectures, both upon the institutes of Justinian and the local constitutions of his native soil, under the very eminent professors that abound in their several universities. And in the northern parts of our own island, where also the municipal laws are frequently connected with the civil, it is difficult to meet with a person of liberal education who is destitute of a competent knowledge in that science, which is to be the guardian of his natural rights and the rule of his civil conduct. Nor have the imperial laws been totally neglected, even in the English nation. A general acquaintance with their decisions has ever been deservedly considered as no small accomplishment of a gentleman, and a fashion has prevailed, especially of late, to transport the growing hopes of this island to foreign universities, in Switzerland, Germany, and Holland, which, though infinitely inferior to our own in every other consideration, have been looked upon as better nurseries of the civil, or, which is nearly the same, of their own municipal law. In the meantime, it has been the peculiar lot of our admirable system of laws to be neglected, and even unknown, by all but one practical profession, though built upon the soundest foundations, and approved by the experience of ages. Far be it from me to derogate from the study of the civil law, considered, apart from any binding authority, as a collection of written reason. No man is more thoroughly persuaded of the general excellence of its rules, and the usual equity of its decisions, nor is better convinced of its use as well as ornament to the scholar, the divine, the statesman, and even the common lawyer. But we must not carry our veneration so far as to sacrifice our Alfred and Edward to the manes of Theodosius and Justinian. We must not prefer the edict of the praetor, or the rescripts of the Roman emperor, to our own immemorial customs, or the sanctions of an English parliament, unless we can also prefer the despotic monarchy of Rome and Byzantium, for whose meridians the former were calculated, to the free constitution of Britain, which the latter are adapted to perpetuate. Without detracting therefore from the real merit which abounds in the imperial law, I hope I may have leave to assert, that if an Englishman must be ignorant of either the one or the other, he had better be a stranger to the Roman than the English institutions. For I think it an undeniable position, that a competent knowledge of the laws of that society in which we live is the proper accomplishment of every gentleman and scholar, and highly useful, I had almost said essential, part of liberal and polite education. And in this I am warranted by the example of ancient Rome, where, as Cicero informs us, the very boys were obliged to learn the 12 tables by heart, as a carmen necessarium, or indispensable lesson, to imprint on their tender minds an early knowledge of the laws and constitutions of their country. But, as the long and universal neglect of this study, with us in England, seems in some degree to call in question the truth of this evident position, it shall therefore be the business of this introductory discourse, in the first place, to demonstrate the utility of some general acquaintance with the municipal law of the land, by pointing out its particular uses in all considerable situations of life. Some conjectures will then be offered with regard to the causes of neglecting this useful study, to which will be subjoined a few reflections on the peculiar propriety of reviving it in our own universities. And, first, to demonstrate the utility of some acquaintance with the laws of the land, let us only reflect a moment on the singular frame and policy of that land, which is governed by this system of laws. A land, perhaps the only one in the universe, in which political or civil liberty is the very end and scope of the Constitution. This liberty, rightly understood, consists in the power of doing whatever the law permits. Footnote: Facultas eiut, quodcuique facere libet, nisi quid vi aut iure probibetur. End footnote. Which is only to be effected by a general conformity of all orders and degrees to those equitable rules of action, by which the meanest individual is protected from the insults and oppression of the greatest. As therefore every subject is interested in the preservation of the laws, it is incumbent upon every man to be acquainted with those, at least, with which he is immediately concerned, lest he incur the censure as well as inconvenience of living in society without knowing the obligations which it lays him under.